Right, you're listening to GTFM 107.9. You're listening to Driver's Seats. My name is Ian Edwards, and you're listening GTFM 107.9 and online at gtfm.co.uk. Now, we spoke about TR7s being launched in 1975. There was actually another car that was launched also in 1975, and on the line to tell us all about it is Stephen Mosley. Good evening, Stephen.
Good evening, and could I just say to start off with, it's the Chevette Owners Group, not the Chevette Owners.
Chevette Owners Group. Look, yeah. as I keep referring to all night, I was up at 4 o'clock working hard this morning, so I do apologise. Right, so tell us about, so it's the Chevette Owners Group.
That's correct. It was set up quite a while ago now with, I believe, a group of friends. The way these things usually are, you get one or two friends together who have a similar interest, and you find that as a group it helps with to build on your social side, and obviously with cars when it comes to expertise fixing and sourcing different items that may be difficult to get hold of. It just makes sense to all lump in together. And I joined the Chevette Owners Group, I guess it must be about 12 years ago when I bought mine. And I have to say, I find them to be extremely helpful and a very friendly bunch.
So what was the idea behind calling it a group, or was it just that you thought, let's call it a group as opposed to an owners club then?
Well, I wasn't in there at the start, so I don't know what sort of machinations went on, but I'm guessing the fact that the initial spell COG might have something to do with it. Helps to keep it nice and easy to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we do apologise on that one, but that was a genuine description. Hopefully we can get away with that one. Okay, Vauxhall Chevette. Come on, Steve. Why, of all the cars in all the world, I usually get different answers on this one, so fire away. Now, why a Chevette?
Well, apart from it's the best one money can buy, obviously. For me personally, it came down to the fact that I learned to drive in one. But when you have a look at it, it's probably one of the last affordable, small, light rear-wheel drives that you can get hold of. And most motoring enthusiasts, I think, not all by any means, but a lot of them feel that rear-wheel drive is where it's at. And I always say that rear-wheel drive is a lot more fun. The only downside is it will occasionally try to kill you. But apart from that, it's a huge laugh. And personally, I have to say, I've always preferred the look of the Chevette. I think it's a more complete shape with its streamlining, especially the hatchback, to its natural competitors like the Talbot Sunbeam and, of course, the Ford Escort.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in many ways, to be honest with you, is the fact, as far as sort of the value for money of the Chevette compared certainly to two-door Escorts, it's phenomenal, isn't it? And it's a simple car, and you say about killing you, but of course, you know, when it does sort of snap out a line, if you like, that's not at 200 mile an hour. That's a much lower speed, isn't it?
There's a lot to be said for it. Obviously, only really muck about on track days and private land and so on. But the Chevette, I found, it's quite a short wheelbase, but even so, it's quite controllable. And as a car to learn to drive quickly and to get fun from, there's not an awful lot that can touch it. In the 1300 guys, which most were sold as a 1300, they're not hugely powerful, but of course they've not got very wide tyres on them neither, so your adhesion matches the power you can put in through to the back wheels. And all I can say is that they're a real good fun little car to mess about with.
So would you say then it would be a good starter classic for most who want to get involved in classic cars?
I think so, because again, certainly in the 1300 guys, they're insurance friendly, they're easy to work on, the technology is quite basic, the engine is a pushrod unit which was brought over from the Viva. Now, that's a disadvantage if you're looking outright power, looking at some of the more slightly more exotic specs of competitors, but it does mean it's very simple to work on, very simple to set up, and it's a good car not only to learn how to drive, but also to learn how to mechanic.
Because, I mean, the thing is, I'm just thinking now, in my head really, is the fact that the previous Viva was available as a Magnum in an 1800 and a 2.3, but of course the Chevettes were mainly 1300s, and of course you had the extreme of the 2.3 HS, didn't you?
Yes, and certainly my family had 2 or 3 Chevettes when I was growing up, and they were all 1300s, and generally the ones you saw were the 1300 engine. But it's worth bearing in mind that there was a 1600 tax buster, which I think they sold a few more Cadettes on the continent, but it was there. There was an 1800, and then, of course, like you say, they came up with the 2.3. It's interesting, I think, that Vauxhall took the opposite view to Ford. Ford very much sold their higher-powered, higher-spec cars with the Escort and really pushed it, whereas Chevette with Vauxhall only really produced the homologation specials with the 2.3 slant 4 twin-cab engine in it. But the HS and HSR are phenomenal cars, and there's actually a clip on YouTube where Russell Brooks actually says that the Chevette's a better car than the Escort, so that tells you how good they are.
And of course, that Chevette he had in the classic Andrews Heat for Hire colours for a while, didn't he?
That's probably one of the, well, I think it's the iconic British privateer colour scheme, personally, Andrews, and it was on a lot of cars. The DTV cars, which were run semi-officially for Vauxhall, dealer team Vauxhall, always ran in silver, and therefore the HS and HSRs you generally see are in silver. But that's again up at the top end. As with all cars of that era, they're good, strong colour range available with the less exotic ones.
Are there many sort of, let me think now, saloons, estates, and the Chevan, wasn't it? Was it called the Chevan?
It was indeed called.
Oh, there you go. Anorak time. There you go.
Yes, I'm mightily impressed there. The four-door, or more-door, as some refer to them, there are an awful lot of those sold because it was a smaller family car, and that's how it was pitched and that's how it was sold. And the basic body styles were, there was the hatchback, there was a booted two-door, there was a booted four-door, and then there was the estate and the Chevan. And there's a guy actually not too far from me called Bill Lewis, who I believe has got 2 Chevans, but they're a pretty rare beast these days. But of course, there's the big Vauxhall meeting at Billing coming up, where Chevette Owners Group will have a stand. That's next weekend, and I should imagine Bill will be taking one of those to that event.
So what about parts? As far as body parts, trim, an engine. How do you get? And how many numbers are out there as well? Let's throw in 2 questions for you.
I think there's about 900 registered on the road, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So it's around about 1,000, which, when you consider how popular it was, I couldn't give you a figure for how many were produced off the top of my head, but, it used to be you'd see them on every street corner.
That's right. Well, just to give you an idea, is that I used to sell Austin Rover, sorry to spoil your party,
That's right.
And I had a Montego Turbo, and they produce thousands of Montego Turbos. There are 5 left. So you're probably a little bit better than the Montegos at the moment.
Yes, this is true. But certainly, yeah, I think about 900, and it's the usual thing of, the everyday cars get left behind, as people always go for the aspirational stuff if they're looking to preserve something. But as regards the parts, within the owners group, the parts can be a bit tricky to get hold of, but again, with that support of people who've been hoarding stuff and breaking cars over the years that aren't savable, you can generally get hold of stuff. It's a little bit tricky. Body panels, because they get rallied and there's a lot shared with the Opel Kadett of the same age, you can get quite a few of the body panels if you look around, so it's the structural members, sills and things like that. It is tricky, but I rather hope that as they gain value, really, because the Escorts have gone up so high, the values of Chevettes and the like are coming up now, and they are getting rallied as something alternative and something a bit more interesting. And hopefully that will start to kick off more of a grassroots production of parts so that we can keep these cars on the road.
Well, there's 2 sides to that coin, isn't there? Is the fact that they're worth restoring, so you won't get so many thrown away. But then with values going up, the genuine enthusiasts, and at the moment values on Chevettes are very, very good. At the end of the day, you can pick them up. What is it, sort of £1,000, 500 in some cases, or was that a bit low?
A standard one with an MOT, I've been keeping an eye on them, if only to defend the amount I've spent on mine with my wife.
It's never going to work, mate. I'm telling you, never going to work.
We try. But when you consider I bought mine with an MOT 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, something like that, £175 as a standard 3-door. Now I guess they're around low ones, 1,200 quid, something like that. They are picking up, really. So in that period, as a percentage, they've gone up an awful lot. I can't see them doing anything else other than keep going upwards.
But that's still reasonable value for money for a classic, when some other 70s classics are getting a bit silly now, aren't they?
Yes, and I think the key is as well, it's the fact that it's a usable classic. It's with any old car, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, you have to sort of keep an eye on how often you can expect it to break down, what you need to keep an eye on, what you lose out on compared to a modern car. So things like crash protection isn't anywhere near so good. You don't get any of the electronic toys whatsoever. You don't even get central locking. But it is a usable, everyday classic. So I think if you look at it in those terms of spending that sort of money to buy it, then you're looking almost as a complete alternative to a modern car, and then it becomes, I think, a very viable proposition from a money point of view.
And it's mechanical to drive, isn't it? I mean, my Mini's been off the road for 2 years,
Sure.
and having sort of driven it now, I mean, I suppose the classic bit was the fact that I brought it from the MOT station to put petrol in it and go home, and then 2 hours later my wife rang me up to ask me where I was. It's got to be done. But there is a far more mechanical feel. You turn the steering wheel, and it's not electric, and the wheels move, and you've got to be there with a clutch, you've got to be there with a gearbox, and it engages you as a driver, doesn't it?
Well, funnily enough, I have 2 cars only. One of them's the Chevette, and the other one's an MGB GT V8. And the reason I have 2 cars is that for classic insurance, I can share the mileage between them to keep them sensible. And obviously, one of them will break down at some point, in which case you've got the other one. And the reason I run those 2 cars is I've driven a Ferrari 355, I think it is, a BMW M5, Golf GTIs, all that sort of stuff. And none of them give you the feel of either the Chevette or the MG. And to return to the Chevette, obviously, as being the car that we're particularly talking about, the gear change is a real rifle bolt action to it. And you also have a fairly sharp clutch, which can take a little bit of time to master, but once you have it, it means you can go through gear changes in a lightning quick manner. And the steering as well is nicely weighted. You know exactly what it's doing. It's telling you what the road is like underneath you. It's telling you the dynamics of the car. And you can really drive these things as a much more involved experience than with any modern car I've tried so far.
So which way would you look? Would you say the Escort is overrated and the Chevette is the Chevette, or would you say the Chevette is underrated and the Escort is where it should be? Oh, this controversial, isn't it?
I would honestly say, hand on heart, that I think the Chevette is underrated. I think what it comes down to is that all of those types of cars of that era, they are the last of the small, visceral driving experience type cars that you can get a lot of power out of and a lot of fun. And I think as such they're really going to be seen as defining the end of an era, because from then onwards the cars have been, certainly in that size, predominantly front-wheel drive, which again, like I say, absolutely fine. I know there'll be a lot of fans of the front-wheel drive car as something to go and have a play in, if you like. But the Chevette, the Escort, the Talbot Sunbeam and so on, really are the end of an era. And for anyone who wants that direct driving experience with rear-wheel drive, I think they're going to keep looking back to those cars.
Yeah, because it was actually, you're absolutely right, because it was actually a surprise when the Sunbeam came out, but of course it was just Chrysler trying to get something out of nothing and develop it as cutting down an Avenger. And of course, so it's that with a Chevette. I suppose you've got to put those two together because the Escort was a little bit different. But yeah, they kind of almost held on to that rear-wheel drive, didn't they? Whereas you had the Renault 5, okay, they were a bit smaller, but space inside was bigger. The Fiat 127, and probably the couple of the Peugeots, so they were out of sync a little bit, weren't they?
Absolutely. In a lot of ways, Vauxhall, I think, missed the boat a little bit. And of course, the other one that you didn't mention that absolutely iconic is the Volkswagen Golf. The Super Mini era, I remember, because I am that old, when the Fiesta came out as being trumpeted as this wonderful new Super Mini, and this is the way forward. And it was it'd taken everyone else long enough to catch up with what Austin had done with the Mini, but it was transverse engine, front-wheel drive, it does release space inside. It means you can make the car smaller and lighter. Intrinsically, it's a safer car because they tend to understeer if you get it wrong into a corner rather than snap oversteer. And it made a lot more sense. And I think we were lucky that the Chevette came out when it did. Otherwise, we'd have probably gone straight from the Viva to the Astra or an Astra Light car, and we would have missed out on this. And I don't know if it would have had anything like the styling cues of the Chevette either, which I feel I must return to because I just think it's an absolutely cracking looking little car. And certainly if you look at an HS or an HSR from the rear with the big wide wheels on them, there's very little can touch it from an aesthetics point of view.
Well, I was going to be controversial now and say, yeah, the Cadet and the Astra, actually, to be honest, by comparison, were quite bland. OK then, Steve, well, thank you very much indeed. It's been a fascinating chat. Obviously, you're going to be bringing your MG down to our BMC day. If you get your jab sorted and your passport, I'm sure we can chat about that.
I look forward to seeing that, yeah.
But is there anything, I mean, coming back to Chevette now, give us the plug for the club in terms of if they want to buy a Chevette, they go out and buy a Chevette, how do they get in touch with the club, and your website and contact address details, please?
Very easy. The Chevette Owners Group does have its own website, so if you put into your search engine Chevette Owners Group, rather, it should take you to it. We also have a very active Facebook page. Contact through either of those would be great. And people who run the club will pick it up. And obviously, there's lots of advice from people on there who have Chevettes for sale, who have been running Chevettes for a while, who have modified them, which is a big scene that's going on. And they're just a great friendly bunch. Or if you're going to be at Billing next weekend, then come to the stand there where they're hoping to get 40 Chevettes together to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the car.
Brilliant. Well, good luck with that birthday. And maybe we can catch up with you at the NEC at the end of the season. How's that?
Marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Steve.